You won't believe what Jake uncovered about his perfect marriage. One casual comment over coffee spiraled into a web of lies, betrayal, and a shocking twist that left everyone stunned. What happens when trust crumbles and a man takes a stand? Let's dive into the story. Jake Thompson, a 32-year-old architect in Seattle, was the kind of man who believed in building things that last, whether it was a sleek downtown office tower or a marriage rooted in trust. He and Emma, his wife of 5 years, had a rhythm that felt unshakable. Every Sunday, they'd sit at their kitchen table, sipping coffee, planning their week, and dreaming about the future, a house with a yard, maybe a kid or two. Jake wasn't flashy. He showed his love through steady actions. Fixing Emma's car when it broke down, surprising her with takeout from her favorite Thai place, or just listening when she needed to vent after a long day teaching at the local high school. To him, love was partnership, not grand gestures. That Sunday morning started like any other. The coffee machine gurgled as Jake poured 2 mugs, the familiar aroma filling the air. Emma scrolled through her phone, her thumb flicking across the screen. Jake slid her mug across the table, and she gave him a quick smile before looking back down. It was a small moment, the kind that usually passed without notice. But then, out of nowhere, Emma said, "Did you hear? Ethan, my old college friend, just got dumped." Jake froze, his mug halfway to his lips. Ethan. The name hit like a stray note in a familiar song. Emma rarely mentioned her past, and when she did, it was in vague, fleeting references. Ethan was her ex from college, someone she dated briefly before Jake. He wasn't a ghost that haunted their marriage. Jake wasn't the jealous type, but the casual way she dropped the news felt off. "How do you know that?" he asked, keeping his tone even. Emma's thumb stopped scrolling. She hesitated, just a beat too long, before answering. "Oh, I saw it on his Instagram. You know, one of those vague breakup posts." Her voice was light, but her eyes stayed glued to her phone. Jake leaned back in his chair, studying her. "You follow him?" She shrugged, still not meeting his gaze. "Not really. I mean, I don't follow him, but his stuff pops up sometimes. You know how algorithms are." The explanation sounded reasonable, but something about it didn't sit right. Jake took a slow sip of his coffee, letting the moment pass. "You talk to him at all?" he asked, his voice still calm, but probing. "Hardly ever," she said quickly, finally looking up. "Like once in a blue moon, he'll send a 'hey, how's it going' message. Nothing serious." Jake nodded, but his mind was already turning. Why mention Ethan at all? Why the sudden need to share his breakup news? It wasn't jealousy that stirred in him. It was the sense that Emma was holding something back. He'd always prided himself on reading people, a skill honed from years of negotiating with clients and contractors. And right now, his instincts were whispering, "She's not telling you everything." The rest of the morning passed quietly, but the air felt different. Emma busied herself with dishes, then announced she had papers to grade and disappeared into the living room. Jake stayed at the table, staring into his cooling coffee. He wasn't the type to overreact or jump to conclusions. But that one comment, "Did you hear? Ethan just got dumped," kept replaying in his head. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she'd said them, with a hint of sympathy, maybe even nostalgia. No one talks about an ex like that without a reason. Over the next few days, Jake started noticing things he'd brushed off before. Emma's phone was always face down now, even when she was just grabbing a glass of water. She'd laugh softly at her screen, then stop when she caught him looking. Once, when he asked what was so funny, she waved it off as just a meme and changed the subject. These were small moments, but they were piling up, each one a tiny crack in the foundation of their marriage. By Wednesday, Jake couldn't shake the unease. He wasn't about to snoop through her phone. That wasn't his style, but he needed to understand what was going on. So, during a quiet moment at work, he sent her a text. "Hey, you free for dinner tonight? Maybe we can talk about the weekend." Her reply came quickly. "Sure, sounds good. Busy day, but I'll be home by 6. It was normal, cheerful even, but it didn't ease the knot in his stomach. That evening, over pizza at their favorite spot near Pike Place Market, Jake tried to keep things light. He asked about her students, her plans for the summer. But when he casually brought up Ethan again, "So, you still hear from that guy much?" Emma's smile faltered. "Not really," she said, poking at her slice. "Why do you ask?" "Just curious," Jake said, watching her closely. "You brought him up the other day, so I wondered." She laughed, but it sounded forced. "God, Jake, it's not a big deal." Can we drop it? He nodded, but the conversation left him more unsettled than before. Emma was deflecting, and she wasn't good at hiding it. The woman who used to tell him everything, her fears, her dreams, even the silly stuff like her obsession with true crime podcasts, was holding back. And Jake, who'd built his life on trust and transparency, couldn't ignore the warning signs. By Friday, the tension was palpable. Jake was working late on a project, sketching designs for a new community center, when Emma called. "Hey, I forgot to tell you," she said, her voice overly casual. "I need to head to Portland this weekend. My cousin Sarah's really sick, bad migraines. She needs help with her kid." Jake's grip tightened on his pencil. "That's sudden. When did this come up?" "Just yesterday," Emma said. "It's kind of urgent. I'll be back Sunday night." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Need me to come with you? I can clear my weekend." No, it's fine," she said quickly. "I've got it. You got that deadline, right?" She wasn't wrong. Jake did have a deadline, but her insistence on going alone felt like another piece of the puzzle. "All right," he said. "Let me know how it goes." When he hung up, the office was quiet, but his mind was loud. Something was off, and he couldn't shake the feeling that Emma's trip wasn't what it seemed. He didn't have proof, not yet, but Jake wasn't the kind of man to sit back and wait for the truth to fall into his lap. He'd built his career on solving problems, and now he'd have to solve this one before it unraveled everything he'd worked so hard to build. What happens next? You'll have to keep reading to find out how Jake's world turns upside down and what he does about it. What would you do if you sensed your partner was hiding something? Jake Thompson, our steady Seattle architect, is about to uncover a truth that shakes his world. After Emma's odd comment about her ex, Ethan, and her sudden, urgent trip to Portland, Jake's instincts are screaming. Is she telling the truth, or is something darker at play? Let's dive into the next chapter of this gripping tale. Jake woke up Saturday morning to an empty house, the silence louder than usual. Emma had left for Portland at dawn, her suitcase packed with a haste that felt rehearsed. She'd kissed him goodbye, promising to text when she arrived, but her eyes had darted away, avoiding his. Jake poured his coffee, the routine grounding him as his mind raced. Her story about her cousin Sarah's migraines didn't add up. Emma wasn't one to drop everything for family emergencies. She'd always been pragmatic, even detached, about extended relatives. Why now? And why alone? He tried to focus on work, sketching plans for a community center at his desk, but his thoughts kept drifting. The past week replayed like a loop. Emma's guarded phone, her quick dismissal of Ethan's messages, her forced laugh when questioned. Each moment was a brick in a wall he hadn't noticed building between them. Jake wasn't paranoid. He prided himself on being rational, but he couldn't ignore the pattern. He needed answers, not assumptions. By noon, he made a decision. He pulled up his phone and scrolled to the contact for Emma's aunt, Linda, Sarah's mother. Linda was a no-nonsense woman who'd always liked Jake, often sending him homemade jam from her organ orchard. If anyone would know about Sarah's supposed crisis, it was her. He dialed, keeping his tone light to mask the churn in his gut. "Hey, Linda, it's Jake," he said when she answered, her voice warm as always. "Just checking in." Emma mentioned Sarah's having a rough time with migraines. "Is she doing okay?" There was a pause, brief but heavy. "Migraines?" "Sarah's fine, Jake," Linda said, confused. "She was at work yesterday, and this morning she took her kid to soccer practice. No health issues I know of." Jake's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice steady. "Huh, must have mixed things up. Maybe Emma meant someone else." "Thanks for clarifying." "No problem, dear," Linda said. "Everything okay with you too?" "All good." Jake lied, ending the call with a polite goodbye. He set the phone down, staring at it as if it might explain why Emma had fabricated an entire story. His pulse quickened, not with anger, but with a cold clarity. She'd lied, blatantly. The question wasn't just why. It was what else she was hiding. He spent the afternoon pacing, weighing his options. Confronting her over the phone would tip her off, let her craft another excuse. No, he needed to see her reaction in person to gauge the truth in her eyes. But Portland was a 3-hour drive, and he didn't even know where she was staying, or if she was in Portland at all. The uncertainty gnawed at him, but Jake wasn't one to act rashly. He needed a plan. That evening, he checked Emma's social media, something he rarely did. Her profiles were quiet. No new posts, no stories. But then he noticed her location settings were still active on a shared app they used for grocery lists. A quick check showed her phone pinging from a hotel in downtown Portland, not Sarah's house in the suburbs. His stomach twisted. Why a hotel? Why not her cousin's place? He resisted the urge to call, instead saving a screenshot of the location. Evidence, he told himself, though he hated the word. Sunday morning, Jake woke with a decision. He'd drive to Portland, not to ambush her, but to understand. If she was telling the truth, he'd apologize for doubting her. If not, he needed to know what he was dealing with. He packed a small bag, grabbed his keys, and hit the road, the Seattle skyline fading in his rearview mirror. The drive was a blur of highways and half-formed thoughts. He didn't blast music or call a friend to vent. He let the silence sharpen his focus. By midday, he reached the hotel, a mid-range chain near Portland's waterfront. The lobby was busy, but he spotted Emma's car in the parking lot. His heart sank, confirmation she wasn't at Sarah's. He didn't go inside. Instead, he sat in his truck, watching the entrance. Part of him hoped she'd walk out with a simple explanation. A work event, a friend's emergency. But deep down, he knew better. Hours passed. Jake sipped a gas station coffee, his eyes fixed on the hotel doors. Around 4 p.m., Emma emerged, but she wasn't alone. A man walked beside her, laughing, his hand brushing her arm. Jake's breath caught. It was Ethan, the same Ethan she'd called a college friend, whose breakup she'd mentioned so casually. They stopped by her car, Emma smiling in a way Jake hadn't seen in months. The sight wasn't just a betrayal. It was a gut punch, proof of a lie he'd hoped wasn't true. He didn't storm over, didn't honk or yell. Jake watched as they hugged, Ethan lingering too long before heading to his own car. Emma drove off, presumably back to Seattle. Jake stayed put, his hands gripping the steering wheel. His mind was clear now, but his chest was tight. This wasn't about jealousy. It was about respect, or the lack of it. Emma hadn't just lied about the trip. She'd lied about who she was spending it with. Jake drove back to Seattle that evening, the road stretching out like a question mark. He didn't know what he'd say when Emma walked through the door, but he knew one thing. He wasn't the type to let this slide. He'd built his life on trust, and Emma had cracked that foundation. What would he do next? Confront her? Walk away? Or something else entirely? You'll have to keep reading to see how Jake takes control of his story and what shocking twist awaits when he faces Emma head-on. How far would you go to protect your dignity? Jake Thompson, our resolute Seattle architect, has just uncovered his wife Emma's lie about a weekend trip to Portland. Spotting her with her ex, Ethan, outside a hotel confirmed his worst suspicions. Now, as he drives back to confront the truth, the stakes are higher than ever. What happens when trust is shattered and a man demands answers? Buckle up for the explosive turning point of this story. Jake's truck hummed along the I-5, the Seattle skyline looming closer with every mile. His hand stayed steady on the wheel, but his mind was a storm of clarity and resolve. Seeing Emma with Ethan in Portland wasn't just a betrayal. It was a deliberate choice to deceive. The image of her smiling, Ethan's hand grazing her arm, burned in his memory. Jake wasn't one for outbursts, but he wasn't a pushover either. He'd built his career on precision, and now he'd handle this with the same calculated focus. He reached their Seattle home just after 8 p.m. on Sunday, the street quiet under the glow of streetlights. Emma's car wasn't in the driveway yet. She was likely still on her way back from Portland. Jake parked, grabbed his bag, and stepped inside, the silence of the house amplifying his anticipation. He didn't pace or fidget. Instead, he sat on the living room couch, phone in hand, replaying the facts. The fake story about her cousin, the hotel, Ethan's presence. Each piece locked into place, forming a truth he could no longer ignore. At 9:17 p.m., headlights flashed through the window. Emma's car pulled in. Jake's pulse quickened, but he stayed still, his face a mask of calm. The front door opened, and Emma walked in, her keys jingling as she set down her bag. "Hey, you're home early," she said, her voice bright but tinged with surprise. She froze when she saw Jake's expression, steady, unyielding, like a man who'd already made up his mind. "Sit down," Jake said, his tone low but firm, pointing to the chair across from him. Emma hesitated, then complied, her movements cautious. "What's going on?" she asked, her eyes searching his. "I know you weren't with Sarah," Jake said, cutting straight to it. "I called Linda. She said Sarah's fine. No migraines, No emergency. So where were you, Emma? Her face paled, but she recovered quickly, forcing a laugh. Okay, I might have exaggerated. Sarah wasn't sick, but I needed to help her with some stuff. It was last minute. Stop. Jake interrupted, his voice sharp but controlled. I drove to Portland today. I saw you at the hotel. With Ethan. The air in the room shifted, heavy with the weight of his words. Emma's mouth opened, then closed, her hands twisting in her lap. For a moment, she said nothing, caught in the trap of her own lie. Jake, it's not what you think, she finally said, her voice unsteady. He just showed up. We ran into each other, and we grabbed coffee to catch up. That's all. Jake leaned forward, his gaze piercing. You expect me to believe your ex, who you barely talked to, just happened to be at your hotel? That you lied about a sick cousin for no reason? Try again, Emma. She flinched, her eyes darting away. Okay, Fina. I needed a break, all right? Things have been heavy here. I went to Portland to clear my head, and Ethan messaged me. He was in town, so we met up. It was nothing serious, just talking. Talking. Jake repeated, his voice flat. You lied to my face, snuck off to meet your ex, and you call that nothing? You think I'm an idiot? No, I don't. Emma's voice rose, defensive. I just needed space, Jake. You're always so intense, always watching, always asking questions. I didn't want to fight, so I made up the Sarah thing. It was easier. Easier than what? Being honest. Jake stood, his height commanding the room. I've given you everything, trust, time, support. And you repay me by sneaking around with Ethan? Get your things. You're not staying here tonight. Emma's eyes widened, her breath catching. You're kicking me out? Over this? Jake, nothing happened. I swear, it was just coffee. Then why hide it? He shot back. Why lie about the trip? Why is your phone always face down? Why is Ethan texting you at all? He paused, letting the questions hang. You crossed the line, Emma. You didn't just lie. You broke something we can't fix. She stood, her hands shaking. You're blowing this out of proportion. I didn't cheat. I needed a moment to breathe. You can't punish me for that. I'm not punishing you, Jake said, his voice cold but steady. I'm protecting myself. You made a choice to deceive me, and I'm making a choice now. Pack a bag. Go to your parents or wherever. Just not here. Emma stared at him, tears welling, but Jake's resolve didn't waver. She moved slowly, grabbing a few essentials from their bedroom, her movements mechanical. Jake stayed in the living room, arms crossed, watching as she zipped up her bag. We can talk about this tomorrow, she said, her voice small, almost pleading. There's nothing to talk about, Jake replied. You've said enough. She lingered at the door, as if waiting for him to soften, but Jake turned away. The door clicked shut behind her, and the house fell silent again. He didn't feel relief or victory, just a hollow ache. 5 years of marriage, countless shared moments, reduced to this, a lie exposed, a line drawn. Jake didn't sleep that night. He sat at the kitchen table, coffee cold in his mug, replaying the confrontation. Emma's excuses rang hollow, her tears more about being caught than remorse. He wasn't naive. He knew this wasn't just about coffee with Ethan. It was about her willingness to hide, to manipulate, to prioritize her own comfort over their partnership. That betrayal cut deeper than any physical affair. By morning, Jake had made his next move. He called a lawyer friend, Mark, who specialized in family law. I need to know my options, Jake said, keeping his voice matter of fact. This isn't salvageable. Mark agreed to meet later that week, promising a clean, fair process. Jake didn't want to fight or drama, just a way out that left his dignity intact. As he hung up, his phone buzzed with a text from Emma. I'm at my parents. I am sorry, Jake. Can we talk? I didn't mean for this to happen. He read it once, then set the phone down. Talking wouldn't erase what she'd done. It wouldn't rebuild the trust she'd shattered. Jake wasn't sure what came next, but he knew one thing. He was done living in the shadow of her lies. What will Jake do now? Will Emma's apologies change his mind, or is something even bigger waiting to unravel? Keep reading to find out how this story explodes into its next shocking twist. What do you do when a life you built crumbles? Jake Thompson, our steadfast Seattle architect, has just kicked his wife Emma out after catching her in a web of lies about her ex, Ethan. With divorce papers in motion, Jake's world is shifting, but he's not one to stay down. Can he rebuild stronger, or will Emma's pleas pull him back into chaos? Let's dive into the fallout of this gripping tale. Jake woke the next morning to a quiet house, the kind of stillness that follows a storm. Emma's absence was tangible, her usual presence, her coffee mug on the counter, her shoes by the door, gone. He made a single cup of coffee, the routine grounding him as he processed the night before. Her tears, her excuses about needing space, her insistence that nothing happened with Ethan. It all felt like noise, drowning out the truth. Jake wasn't angry anymore. He was resolute. Trust, once broken, didn't bend back into shape. By 9 a.m., he was on the phone with his lawyer, Mark, laying out the situation. No drama, no fights, Jake said, his voice firm. I just want a clean break. Mark outlined the steps. File for divorce, split assets fairly, avoid court if possible. Jake nodded along, already mentally detaching from the life he'd shared with Emma. Their home, their plans, their 5 years together, it was over. He didn't want revenge. He wanted freedom. Emma's text came in waves that day. I'm at my parents'. I messed up, Jake. Can we talk? Then, an hour later, it wasn't what you think with Ethan. I swear I didn't cheat. By evening, please, let's fix this. I love you. Jake read each one, his thumb hovering over the reply button, but he didn't respond. Her words felt like a script, rehearsed to soften the blow of her choices. He'd heard enough lies in Portland. He wasn't buying more. To clear his head, Jake drove to a new apartment complex he designed near Lake Union. The project was nearly complete, its clean lines and open spaces a testament to his ability to create something solid. Walking the site, he checked beams and fixtures, but his mind was on his next steps. He couldn't stay in their house, surrounded by memories of Emma's betrayal. By noon, he called a realtor to list it and started searching for a new place, a fresh start. That evening, he met his friend Sam at a quiet diner near Fremont. Sam, a contractor who'd worked with Jake for years, was blunt but loyal. Over burgers, Jake shared the basics. Emma's lie about Portland, seeing her with Ethan, the confrontation. Sam shook his head. Man, that's cold. You deserve better. What's your plan? Divorce, Jake said simply. Sell the house, move on. I'm not wasting energy on someone who can't be straight with me. Sam nodded. Good call. But heads up, heard from a buddy that Emma's been posting with Ethan online. Photos, stories, the works. Started right after she left her place. Jake's jaw tightened, but he didn't flinch. Figures, he said, taking a sip of his soda. She's not my problem anymore. The news didn't surprise him, but it confirmed what he'd suspected. Emma's coffee with Ethan was no accident. She'd been building a bridge to her past while burning the one to their future. The next few days were a blur of action. Jake met with a realtor who priced their house for a quick sale. He found a one-bedroom apartment downtown, close to his office, and signed a lease without hesitation. Packing was methodical. He kept his tools, books, and a few photos from before Emma, leaving her belongings for her to collect. Each step felt like shedding weight, reclaiming control. Emma tried calling twice, leaving voicemails that Jake deleted unheard. Her texts grew longer, more desperate. I know I screwed up, but we can work through this. Ethan was a mistake. I'm not with him. Jake didn't buy it. Her lies had stacked too high, and her sudden remorse felt convenient, triggered by being caught rather than genuine regret. He blocked her number, not out of spite, but necessity. He needed space to rebuild, not more excuses to dissect. By Friday, Jake was settling into his new apartment. It was bare, just a bed and a desk, but it felt like his. At work, he threw himself into the community center project, refining designs and meeting with clients. His focus impressed his team, who noticed his drive, but not his pain. Jake didn't talk about Emma. He wasn't one to air his wounds. Instead, he channeled his energy into creating something lasting, something he could trust. A week later, Sam called with an update. Thought you should know, Emma and Ethan are official now. Posted some cheesy couple photo at a brewery. She's telling people you overreacted, that it was just a misunderstanding. Jake let out a dry laugh. She can spin it however she wants. I know what I saw. He thanked Sam and hung up, unfazed. Emma's narrative didn't change the facts. She'd lied, met her ex in secret, and broken their vows, if not in body, then in spirit. Her moving on with Ethan so quickly only proved Jake's decision was right. That night, alone in his apartment, Jake opened his laptop and started a new sketch. Not for work, but for himself. It was a small cabin, simple and sturdy, somewhere he could escape to one day. The act of designing it calmed him, a reminder that he could build something new, even after loss. Emma's betrayal had shaken him, but hadn't broken him. He was already laying the foundation for a life without her. But what happens when Emma tries to pull Jake back in her world? Will her next move change everything? Or has Jake already closed the door for good? Keep reading to find out how this story races toward its final, jaw-dropping twist. Can you rebuild a life after betrayal? Jake Thompson, our unshakable Seattle architect, has cut ties with his lying wife, Emma, and moved on with a new apartment and a clear mind. With divorce papers signed, and Emma now openly with her ex, Ethan, Jake is forging his own path. But what happens when Emma tries to crawl back, begging for forgiveness? Will Jake waver, or will he lock the door on their past for good? Let's dive into the moral finale of this gripping saga. Jake's new life was taking shape. His downtown apartment, though sparse, was a blank slate he was slowly making his own. At work, the community center project was nearing completion, its clean lines a testament to his ability to create order from chaos. He'd sold the house he'd shared with Emma, splitting the proceeds without a fight. The divorce, finalized in a quiet notary office, was as clean as he'd hoped. No arguments, no lingering ties. Jake wasn't bitter. He was focused, channeling his energy into work and small acts of renewal, like coaching a local youth soccer team on weekends. Emma, meanwhile, had faded from his daily thoughts. Her text had stopped after he blocked her number, and mutual friends confirmed she was fully with Ethan now, posting about their brewery dates and weekend getaways. Jake didn't check her social media. He didn't need to. Her choices had spoken louder than any photo could. He wasn't surprised when, 3 months post-divorce, a mutual friend, Mia, mentioned over coffee that Emma was telling people Jake had overreacted to her innocent meetup with Ethan. Jake just shrugged. She can rewrite the story, he told Mia. Doesn't change what happened. Life moved forward. Jake's soccer team won their first game, and he celebrated with the kids over pizza, their laughter a reminder of what trust looked like, simple, untainted. At work, he landed a new contract for a library redesign, his sketches earning praise from clients. He even started sketching that cabin again, the one he'd imagined as an escape. It wasn't just a dream now. He'd scouted land an hour outside Seattle, a place to build something permanent on his terms. Then, one rainy Tuesday evening, Jake's phone buzzed with an email from an unknown address. It was Emma. She'd found a way around his block, her words spilling across the screen in a long, emotional plea. Jake, I've made terrible mistakes. Ethan cheated on me with someone from his office. I'm alone now, and I keep thinking about us. I was reckless, selfish. I lied about Portland, about Ethan, and I regret it every day. You were my rock, the only one who really got me. Can we talk? Just talk. I need to make this right. Jake read it twice, his jaw tight. The words stirred memories. Their Sunday coffees, her laugh when they'd binge a new series, the way she'd lean into him during tough days. But those memories were overshadowed by others. Her evasive eyes, her lies about Portland, Ethan's smug presence in his mind's eye. Her regret felt real, but it also felt late, like a script written after the audience had left. He didn't reply right away. Instead, he walked to his window, the Seattle rain streaking the glass, and let the words settle. The next morning, over coffee, Jake called Sam, his contractor friend, to get perspective. She emailed me. Jake said, summarizing her plea. Says Ethan cheated, she's sorry, wants to talk. Sam snorted. Classic. She's lonely now, so she's rewriting history. You buying it? Nope, Jake said, his voice steady. But I owe it to myself to close this cleanly. He typed a response later that day, his words deliberate. No room for misinterpretation. Emma, you made choices that broke what we had. You lied, hid things, and chose Ethan over our marriage. I don't hate you, but I don't trust you. I've moved on, and I'm building a life that doesn't include doubt. I wish you well, but we're done. Don't contact me again. He hit send, then blocked her email. The act wasn't angry. It was final, a lock turn on a door he'd already closed. Days later, Mia texted with an update. Emma had moved back to her parents' place, reeling from Ethan's betrayal. She tried to spin the divorce as Jake's fault, but mutual friends weren't buying it. Her lies had unraveled, leaving her to face the consequences alone. Jake didn't gloat or dwell. Her downfall wasn't his victory. His victory was the peace he'd carved out for himself. By spring, Jake's life felt lighter. The community center opened to local applause, and he stood at the ribbon cutting, proud of what he'd built. The soccer team made playoffs, and he found himself mentoring one of the kids, a shy 12-year-old who reminded Jake of his younger self. He bought that plot of land for his cabin, spending weekends clearing brush and sketching plans. It wasn't just a building. It was a symbol of his resilience, proof he could start over. One evening, walking along the Seattle waterfront, Jake felt something new: freedom. The weight of Emma's betrayal was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. He didn't need her apologies or her regret. He'd faced her lies, drawn his line, and walked away with his dignity intact. The city buzzed around him, ferries honking, street musicians playing, and for the first time in months, he noticed it all without a shadow of doubt trailing him. Emma's choices had cost her the life they'd built, but Jake's choices had saved him. He wasn't just surviving. He was thriving, building a future where trust wasn't a gamble, but a foundation. And as he walked the skyline ahead, he knew he'd never look back. That's the end of Jake's story, a tale of betrayal, strength, and a man who chose himself. What did you think? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned for more stories that hit hard and leave you thinking.